Hey everybody, BTO Pro here. This video is going to get a little bit in the weeds on some custom element development, but it's an interesting paradigm that I'm borrowing from a fellow colleague Michael Potter. I know he loves to build things this way. So I added an item called Item Overlay Ops, and it's for part of Hacks the Web that I needed, or at least sorry, HAXCMS rather. And so if you go in View, what this item is, it's got a super weird generic name. You can look at the API for it and see it just has a whole ton of booleans. And what it does is, so if I look at this second item here, this doesn't have the overlay applied, or actually it has the overlay applied, but it's not in an editing state. I don't see anything. If there is an editing state, it kind of fades the item and then supplies its own little editing experience, if you will. And so this is a hyper-dedicated type of an editing experience, right? So it's the operations of, whatever this card is, or whatever is in here. So that's the important consideration. It's not actually a design element. The design aspect, it appears to be designed, but it's actually just wrapped on top of something else. So if we look down here, we can see the overlay operations just kind of ratchet on top of whatever you put inside of here. And so why would you do this? Well, if you want a design component to be abstracted from a functionality component, this is a really good way of repurposing kind of both pieces, right? So in this example here, I could have this paper card deployed anywhere else that I want to display things as cards, but I could have this little tiny micro editing paradigm able to apply in an abstracted form to effectively anything. So what does that look like in our implementation? So I've been messing with this overview port a little bit. If I hit edit, we can see that we basically toggle a flag for the edit mode, and the edit mode cascades and then shows up. So here, let's actually refresh there we go. Okay, so I get these, I can hover over it and you'll see the tools area shows up now. I can do direction, then if I hit move, you'll see a message that says move left or right, remove, deleting it, which doesn't do anything at the moment, or canceling, and duplicating, or canceling. Or I just hit the little edit button. So what I've effectively got here is this kind of design pattern that I can implement other places. So we need, we have some other UIs that this idea is in place. Maybe not, designed exactly this way, but this idea of pulling up and quickly overlaying the operations. And I should also mention doing it in an accessible way. So when they're there, I can tab to these things and be very aware of what I'm working on and maintain state very effectively, just as this own little tiny thing. So what does that look like under the hood here? So if we look at the code associated with this, we have our card, in this case, on this board called a site card. And a site card is made up of paper card, and it's got a little divider for the name of the title. So that's how you get this, and you get the icon on the line there. So this is its own little element, right? That's a component. I can easily have a mock-up of just that. Nice thing with all this stuff is then scoped. So I've got all the CSS scoped to it. I've got my own little card. I can repurpose site cards everywhere. That's cool. Then we boil that up into a site listing, and a site listing is able to take in a data source of information and then spits it back out onto the page as a list of those things, and it throws down site cards and data binds appropriately. But then I wrap the site card in a button, and so the site card doesn't have this button clickable state, right? So it's just a design asset that I then put inside a paper button, and now it's clickable. And going one step further, go, okay, well, let's wrap that stuff inside of an item overlay operations element. And if we look at it, the operations that show up, edit, remove, duplicate, move, and then edit mode is data binded to the element that we're in. So that's how, when we hit this, it activates the editing state to see it, because this button is effectively toggling edit mode globally, which then cascades down via data binding into here, and we get edit mode locally per item. Okay, now how do we do the events though? Because we have I can set this into this state. I can click move, and something indicates, hey, move. But if we're in the original demo, that doesn't happen. If I hit these, they just exist basically. Okay, that's pretty easy because of event management. So in the overlay itself, we have a couple events that fire, and so 2 events actually. So whenever something is tapped on, and we can see that as add, edit, move, remove, or duplicate, whenever any of those buttons are tapped, it fires an event, or fires a function and then an event. And so one of those is to figure out, hey, should I display buttons and text that indicate that this has some deeper operations, right? Confirming that you want to delete or duplicate, or moving and setting certain functional arrows type of a thing. But then, this is a nice little paradigm in doing any custom element development, is to be like, okay, well, I have some intention for this, but let's let other people decide what they want to do with this, right? This is a really easy way to take things and make them just kind of pure design assets, and then fire up events and let other people listen for those. So this event in item overlay ops is technically whenever someone clicks on a button inside item overlay ops, it's going to fire this event up, which is going to go up out of sites listing in this case, because that's where that element is. And then it's going to go up into HAXCMS site listing, because that's where site listing is, right? And so I can kind of envision that event has just bubbled up out of this tag. So at this tag, because it's coming from something inside of here, I can set a listener, and I can listen on sites listing. The sites listing piece comes from the fact that I have an ID there. So this gets into some Polymer specific syntax, but so I have ID equals sites listing, and then sites listing dot the name of the event I'm listening for, fire an event. So in this case, item operation changed, and then we go, okay, well, was the operation edit? And I can kind of use this, I can look back at these other elements in API and say, oh, what data did I fire up? Well, I fired up a reference to the element that was selected, so I know what they clicked, and the operation, right? So I know what item within that item, or what operation within that item they clicked on. So then I test, okay, is the operation edit? If it's edit, then we run some happy ES6 syntax to see if the element's data attribute for site ID matches any of our site IDs in an array that we have locally. And then if it is, then we just set an active item here, and whenever active item I believe it's changed, yeah. Whenever active item gets changed, we trip an event and we pop up that modal and show you what the thing is effectively. For the directions, all right, there's the, oh, sorry, not this dot fire, but for the directional aspects, I need to search for this dot fire in overlay ops. So there's an option selected. Option select is bound to clicking either option 1 or option 2. So that's what is effectively, in this moment, option 1 and option 2 are left and right. And this time it's confirm, deny. But it's just going to bubble up that option 1 or option 2 was selected. So whenever one of those buttons is clicked, we bundle up our little ops information to fire along. And we say, okay, the element is this. The active operation is what they've clicked on previously. And the option they currently selected is the ID of whatever's in question. So then this message will go up. We check back at our site listing board and see, okay, sites list dot that, all right, item option selected. And that is how we get our little toast messages to appear. So by doing this paradigm, I've abstracted this entire UI UX paradigm of having some simple operations layered on top of something. So this could be anything. It doesn't have to be a card. It could be a list of items. Really it could be anything. But now I've got this item in my toolkit for kind of in context operations on a thing. And so yes, I have in this case made the operations pretty specific, right, to just manipulation of this one thing in question. Right now I don't have any support for if you wanted other buttons here, or whatever, right? It's kind of intentionally locked down as far as capabilities. But this is enough of a paradigm for when we build out parts of our content management presentation engine that we're in the planning phases of, for people to build out outlines of material that they would be able to use a similar type of UI pattern to this. And so not only, by taking the extra, few hours to abstract this, I'm gaining it as a capability going forward. That's kind of the power of web components and custom element spec, is by taking a step back from the fact that I needed a paradigm like this with these options over top of something, and extracting kind of the more functional components that have some design, right, and the events away from the actual design component. I can repurpose both of them independently. And then, in future projects, like that content outlining tool, when we go to implement item overlay ops and we maybe go, oh shoot, we need to improve upon this, then those improvements, accessibility, UX, otherwise, can flow back into, in this case, the HAXCMS, microsite manager. And so this is just another little example of how once you start down the web components paradigm, you kind of just start to be able to repurpose everything all the time if you just think about it a little bit differently.